Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it Mr. Eby or Eby?
It's Eby.
Eby, Mr. Eby or Mr. Bicchetti. And Mr. Eby in particular, you've gone to great length of making all kinds of cost estimates, pretty high detail. Do either of you know how much we've already spent in the U.S. and globally to combat climate change? Do you know what that number is?
I do not, Senator.
Anybody on the panel have any idea how much we've already spent, how much we've committed, either in the U.S. or globally? I mean, my point being is, wouldn't that be a really important number to know to compare to what the damages might be? Again, going to adaptation. Dr. Weinkel, I think you're the only environmental scientist on the panel here. I've seen estimates that if we were to reduce or eliminate CO2 in the U.S. or in the West, it would have a negligible impact on average temperatures over the next 100 years or so. Is that true?
Oh, that specific question goes well beyond sort of my area of expertise in coastal risk. The cost of emission scenarios and on all that.
Okay, Dr. Lewis has raised his hand. Do you have a?
Yes, I do. Not. There.
You're on now.
Okay,
yeah.
sorry. Yes, in fact, in my testimony, I reference a study done by Kevin Diaratna of the Heritage Foundation. He's a PhD data scientist and statistician. And what he did is he just took the EPA's climate policy calculator model, it's acronymed MAGIC, and decided to take a look at what happens to global temperatures at various assumed climate sensitivities. He went all the way from the assumption that it's 1.5,
get the bottom line here.
And basically, if you instantaneously and completely eliminate U.S. CO2 emissions today, and basically, if you take the middle range sensitivity assumption, then you avert about 0.2 of a degree Celsius of global warming by the year 2100.
So again, I believe we probably spent hundreds of billions. I think we're contemplating spending trillions of dollars to do something that we can't do. Again, we recognize in just 20,000 years or less, I mean, it's a blink of the eye in terms of geologic time. The sea levels increased by 390 feet in the Bay of San Francisco. We can't spend enough money. We can't hold back the tides. So this is where the Bjorn Lomborg approach comes into effect. We're far better off spending resources adapting, as opposed to this insane quest to conquer climate change, which we can't do. Again, climate has always changed, always will. So let's spend the resources properly. I also want to talk a little bit about how the cure is worse than the disease. I didn't get it done in time, but I had a photo I was going to show of I don't know how many hundreds of miners in the Congo mining cobalt. And a lot of these are children. Does anybody here have any estimates of how much more copper we're going to have to mine? How much more cobalt we're going to have to mine? How much more lithium we're going to have to mine? How many rare earth minerals we're going to have to mine? What's the impact on the environment of that? What about the unreliability of our grid? Mr. Eby, have you done calculations of that? When because wind and solar are not reliable, you need backup. Have you done any cost calculations of how much it's going to cost when a grid shuts down because of unreliability?
We focus on the economic damages of physical climate change, so not the reliability of the grid or renewable resources.
So again, we are ignoring the main factors here. There's nothing we can do, literally, to combat climate change, particularly when China and India aren't on board, and they never will be on board. So we could spend hundreds of billions, have no impact, waste hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars. We're far better off spending that money to adapt. And we also have to fully realize the cost, the environmental cost of all the additional mining, and understand that it's just not possible to meet these climate change. I mean, you can't end fossil fuels in 10 years. It's impossible. It would impoverish our nation. Why are we even talking about it? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.